And now, get ready, folks. It's time for Banter with Bob Sherwood and Dan Snell. Banter. And now, here's Bob and Dan.
Oh, hey, guys and gals. It's Wednesday. It's in the afternoon.
Winsome Wednesday.
Pardon me?
It's Winsome Wednesday.
It's Winsome Wednesday. The sun is out in Kansas. The sun is out in Phoenix, Arizona. And the market, my gosh, if you're in the market, you're probably, better get your heart attack medicine going because it's worse than a Walt Disney roller coaster.
Today, I've not paid attention.
It was horrible today. It was a bloodbath. I don't see any stocks that went up to maybe AT&T, but the tech stocks, they just took it again. It doesn't make any sense, except somebody, it takes big players to move the market. But yesterday was an incredible day, the last 3 days. But today, in my estimation, it gave back everything that it took in the last 3 days. I think like Tesla's down like $20 a share or something like that.
You were touting that the other day.
Well, yeah, it was up 40. Now it's back down 20. It's a roller coaster. So
what do you attribute this? Soothsayer, sage soothsayer of the West.
I thought it was just the tariffs, but I think there's just so many. Well, let me put it another way. We have so much information now, and it comes to us so fast. Like Goldberg insisting that Hegeseth and this other guy resign because of that Signal email. I mean, those things have an impact. And I think you'll probably know, I'm kind of surprised in a way that nobody has pointed out the fact that the real criminal act here is not the mistake of accidentally sending it to Goldberg, which is a horrible thing. It's Goldberg publishing it for the world to see. And I don't know how Signal works, but when I do confidential emails, like in my casework, at the bottom of the email, it clearly says this email is confidential. If you received it and you're not supposed to receive it, delete it immediately and call this phone number. It doesn't say, oh, by the way, if you receive this information, please publish it so the world can see it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what are the laws of text messages or text streams or chats the same as email?
Well, I don't know about the law. I'm actually talking about the guidance that goes with the text.
With the
now,
app?
I don't know what Signal has, right? But I'm surprised somebody hasn't pointed it out. But again, yeah, I believe these guys screwed up. They got somebody else accidentally in there. But Goldberg publishing it for the world to see, he's like saying, gee, I got this accidentally, and because I got it accidentally, I think I'll just let the whole world look at it, right?
Yeah. Well, today, if you saw recent hours, he released the entire, from the beginning, actually, to the end, and there's nothing on the chat stream that I saw at the beginning that said, this is a confidential.
Well, he would never publish that for sure, right? That'd be self-incriminating.
Well, but he actually showed the actual.
But we don't know. No, we don't know that. We don't know he showed the whole thing. He says he showed the whole thing, right? But the whole thing, well, we don't know. The only way we can really know for sure is if we saw what the what I call the header and the footer. He maybe didn't publish the header. We don't know. But the issue for me is nothing to do with the header, nothing to do with the footer. It's that the real criminal act here is publishing it for the world to see. If I got a confidential piece of information, right, and I could see that it was confidential because it had, war notes on it.
Wait a minute. Keyword there, banter. That's why they call this show Banter. It was said by the President of the United States and everyone on there, there was no confidential information on the text. That's what they said. Correct?
Not exactly what it said, but it certainly isn't confidential now. That's for darn sure, right?
Well, but there were, that's why, I mean, the whole, I'm not defending him, but I can see they said yesterday he's a wacko. Trump called him, what did he call him? He called him a
He's
bunch of names.
He is. He's the nitwit because
He's a lunatic. And
you
so
need
the guy said, hey, you're saying against me that there was nothing confidential on there, and you were asked by Congress to release the information, and because they're attacking him, would you not? If you had the fact of the matter evidence is what they were saying.
Yeah, I'm totally lost now, but I'm totally lost. I think you had a point, but I was kind of lost in having you make it.
Well, my point is, they being all the Trump administration said there was no confidential stuff on there. There was nothing on there that was
Yeah.
confidential, and
Well,
so
remember,
he published today the actual stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, that doesn't conflict. That doesn't conflict with what you just said. For example, we don't know what the definition of confidentiality is, and certainly there are many different levels of it, right? But the real issue to me is not whether it's confidential or not confidential. It's information that any U.S. citizen would recognize. Hey, I should not publish this in a magazine. I should not publish it for the world to see because I'm a United States citizen. And if
Right.
somebody screwed up, I shouldn't punish them by showing the rest of the world what the document said. Now,
Yeah.
I'll say this: when I look at what I just saw, all I saw was a lot of facts about the missiles are going to go here, the missiles are going to go there. Here's a target. I'm just okay. So what? So they got it. Nothing. That's it, right?
Yeah. Well, and this goes back to, I just smile because if the roles were reversed and Biden administration was in office, Trump would be going after, and Trump campaign people would be going after Biden for giving that mistake.
Yeah,
so both sides do it. Both sides do it. I'm just sick of both sides doing it.
Well, I'm not taking one side or the other. Understand that.
Yeah, that's why I say both sides do it.
I'm taking a common sense approach. Common sense tells me if Goldberg is a United States citizen, he knew what he got, he shouldn't have received.
Yeah, I think I said yesterday he could have said, hey, am I supposed to be on this? I mean, I get those sometimes. I go, hey, you got the wrong Snell.
If he'd have been smart, he would have done that.
And then he would have gained favor.
Gained favor. He would now be in favor instead of now people attacking him. As I look at it, there's not enough information here for anybody to resign. To maybe Goldberg. I think what he did was a criminal act, but I'm not sure about that. I don't know what's lawful, but I know this, that I heard they will not be using Signal again. So what else you got going on there, Dan?
Well, that was breaking news about the stock market. I watched an episode of Ozzie and Harriet in our sitcom, special feature sitcom, and all of a sudden now I know that Prime Television can't listen to our conversations, but on Prime, all of a sudden I have this new row. How they have movies, TV shows, they have and sitcoms, and now all of a sudden they have this whole row of old sitcoms, of which Ozzie and Harriet and a bunch of them are on there. I watched it. It's surprising to me, both the wholesomeness and the hilarity of some of those early days.
Yeah, it was clean. I mean, when I say clean, it means you could look at it and not be embarrassed about what they said. But I've seen some other movies just the opposite. I watched a James Stewart movie the other day, and there was an Indian involved, and he made some really negative comments about Indians, like, you give this Indian liquor to drink, better than that. They can't hold their liquor. And he started pushing the Indian away. That was in the movie, right? And I thought,
Jimmy Stewart, Jimmy Stewart, what? You mean to tell me that Indian was drinking?
So what I mean is things have changed. Anyway, so I watched something the other day that one of my friends put me onto. It's a 4-part series on Netflix called Adolescent. Adolescence.
Adolescent on Netflix. I have not seen this. What's it
And
about?
I'll tell you, I watched all 4 episodes, which is basically 100 and it's 4 times 40, so it's 160 minutes, maybe more than that. Last night, I watched it right through all 4 episodes. It's an emotional drain. It's about a family in which the son, who's 13 years old, murders someone or allegedly murders someone, right? So it's whole story, but it's extremely detailed and emotionally draining. It was just, when I finished it, I could almost not think for a while, right? It was so emotionally draining about the impact of parents on kids. But one thing I learned is that there's a term that kids use called incel. Have you ever heard of that before?
Incel? No.
You haven't. I had neither.
What does this term mean? I'm going to have to ask my daughter.
It means involuntary celibacy.
Really? Involuntary?
Yeah, it means when a young person can't find a woman to have sex with.
Well,
You can look it up.
What if you're a semi-old person and you can't?
Well, you can look it up. Well, the point is that there's a social media point that it says that's like the reverse of rape. It's like a woman holding out something and then making it difficult on the person. So it's called incel. You can look it up. I had to look it up to get the definition.
So it's INCEL?
It's like
Celibacy?
INCEL, involuntary celibacy. Anyway.
Yeah. Which ties into yesterday, your song that you were talking about, Lady Gaga, GUY song about the woman having control.
Right. So I don't know. There's some other words. I won't bring them up now. Other words that I had to Google to learn what they actually meant. But it's their social media code. So kids, and I'm going to say kids, 13 to 25 years old, they have certain code.
Yeah.
That they use in social media with the icons and the emotives and things like that. I don't know all those. So I learned that one yesterday. And then I found out when I Googled it, I found that it was pretty commonly known. It was in social media, right?
Yeah. And they have words that when we say the word now, what it used to mean to us, I can't think of one right now, but I know a couple times I've said a word or a phrase, and my daughter, Amanda, 27, she'd say, Dad, do you know what that means today?
Yeah, it's certainly things have changed. So if you want to look at if you want to really have an emotional, I couldn't put this episode down. It's 4 episodes long. Once I started it, I had to stay with it.
So this is where we need the people watching right now, watching Banter with Bob and Dan. Yeah. Write us at webtalkwithbob@gmail. It's going to be right there on the top of your screen, webtalkwithbob@gmail, and tell us something exactly like this, a word or a phrase or new urban slang, as they call it.
Well, I would suggest to people go watch this series, Adolescent.
Adolescent on Netflix.
Send me an email or ask to be on our show and tell us what you thought the message was of this series. Because
we're always looking for great guests. We're good. You're the best question asker in America. When we had our radio program,
I probably am. I've had other people tell me that. But anyway, my real point is that I made an assessment of this series.
Okay.
And so I wrote to this person who turned me on to it, and I said, here's my assessment. And they said I was completely wrong. I was reading more into it than it was. But I was looking at it almost from the parents' point of view.
Yeah.
I kind of concluded things like, God, I mean, as parents, I understand we shouldn't be responsible for the good things our kids do, and we shouldn't be responsible for the bad things they do. But on the other hand, we made them. They grew up around us. Their beliefs and things, whether they're contrary to us or not contrary to us, their beliefs not necessarily are like ours. In fact, they may have exactly contrary beliefs because they looked at what we believed and said, I don't buy any of that, so I'll look at the other side, right?
Yes.
But it's kind of an interesting story. So I looked at it from the parents' point of view, And it was emotionally disturbing because I began to think about in my life, maybe I missed signals that my kids were sending me. That's kind of what this is about, right? As it turned out,
So it would be good to make sure you're getting the right signals and people should
right.
tune in.
Well, yeah, and there's also, I call it the elephant in the room syndrome. And the elephant in the room syndrome is like families have things that it's almost like there's a unwritten rule we don't talk about, right? And
I've known families like that.
And when I was watching this episode, I was thinking, yeah, that's what's happening here. These people knew there was an elephant in the room, but they didn't address it. In retrospect, they said, oh, there was an elephant in the room. I remember that.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything about it.
We need a guest. We need a guest like that to help our listeners better banter around Thanksgiving table or home or when they get together family, because lots of times we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. We don't want to talk about that. We should be able to talk about anything.
Well, yeah.
And say, there's an elephant in the room we need to talk about, and everybody should go, hey, that's cool. We're going to talk about it. Let's get it out in the open. We need a guest. Web Talk with Bob at Gmail. Right.
I was thinking about it because
you are enjoying banter with Bob and Dan. Sometimes it seems like they might require protective spacesuits to work together. Likewise, some families don't always feel like they're in a beautiful field walking, holding hands off into the sunset. They don't have protection and help they'd like. Across America, there are families who face not only banter, but genuine hurtful moments that impact marriages and children. Blended families, step-families, and even single parents every single day face very challenging dynamics and relationships. USABFA is an organization founded to offer understanding, encouragement, daily tips, resources, and services. If you're a single parent or in a blended family, check out USABFA.com. That's USABFA.com.
in our family, let's not use our family as an example. Let's say I know a family
Okay.
that has mixtures of Christian people that believe in Christianity, believe in Jesus Christ and God, and other people in the family that don't. Now, the issue for me is if the parents have a religious bent, should they bring this up with the children that don't? Because we know it'll create an argument, but it's an elephant in the room. So, in other words,
yeah,
if I'm praying and you're not, is that a problem?
Well, I think the best way with that on prayers is you say, "Hey, is it okay with everybody? I'm going to say a quick prayer before meal," or if they're sick, if somebody's sick, you'd say, "Is it okay if I pray for you?" Then you ask permission. 99% of the time, people are going to say, "Okay." They're not going to say, "No, I don't believe in it."
What if I, in order to enlarge the elephant in the room, I address the person that I know doesn't pray, and I say, "Would you say the dinner prayer?"
You
see, it's addressing.
You, Bob Sherwood, would do. I don't think that's appropriate. Because unless you went to them beforehand, and they'd probably say no. But I've seen that done before. But what it does here, just real quick, what it does is only pushes them farther away from any kind of closeness to God.
What I'm driving at is that if there is an elephant in the room, and you have, let's say, 5 people in a room, and 2 people don't want to talk about it, but 3 people do you talk about it, or do you basically let the minority control that discussion? So, well, we won't discuss the elephant then because we know you don't like that elephant or you feel uncomfortable with that elephant, right?
Yeah. That's a great question, Bob. And we'd like to hear from our listeners, because in Snellville, I am of the opinion, and I even always say it, hey, we can hide it and we can put it under the rug, or we can hide it in the closet, but 5 years from now, it's still going to be there, 10 years from now, and I think we should talk about it. And some people get all sensitive about it. But the right thing, and it's a society cultural thing, is anymore. We don't want to offend anybody.
Exactly.
We don't want to offend anybody by talking about it. I say in a polite way and work through that, softening statements, like they say in sales, use a softening statement before you ask. Use a softening statement and say, we got to talk about it.
And I go back to my own family. Obviously, I've got some people in my family that don't like Trump. They're not as anti-Trump as some people are, but I always want to talk about that. I just want to ask them, why don't you like him? Or why don't you like tariffs? Or why don't you like what he's doing with something else? Why don't you like that? But I have people that'll say, well, wait a minute, we don't talk about politics here. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Our whole world is about politics and the law. Well, why not talk about it?
Yeah, that's the challenge, and you and I have had this in our banter conversations.
Right.
I think that the specific items that Donald Trump is doing, I would say 80% of them I applaud and am good. The challenge for him is
because yesterday it was 85%.
Yeah, good memory. See, who says you don't have a great memory at 82 years old?
Nobody ever said that.
But here's the thing. What do I say? His words, his behavior, and his rhetoric will damage his legacy. And if he doesn't pivot, he's going, every time something comes up, like this chat on the last few days on Signal, the way that he handled it was to immediately attack, discredit, diminish.
That's his style.
That's his style. But therein lies the reason why people don't like him, because he's so divisive, and America doesn't need divisiveness.
Gene Kleiner was on my board.
Oh, man, he's a famous guy.
Yeah, he accused me of doing something like that. We were in some discussion about something, and he said, Bob, why do you always go for the jugular? Of course, I said, well, that's the easiest place to kill somebody. I mean, you can knife them in the stomach and have them bleed to death, but that takes 4 or 5 hours. But if you knife them in the jugular, they're dead in a couple of minutes. So no, what I mean, Gene was he was one of the inventors of the semiconductor. He was part of Shockley 8.
Shockley 8. Tell people about that, because a lot of people don't know what the Shockley 8 is. You've told me about the Silicon Valley Shockley 8.
Okay, I don't want to take a lot of time, but you can Google Shockley 8.
Well, I'm ADD.
You'll find out a couple things. First, Norm Shockley, I believe I've got the name right. Norm Shockley was a Nobel Prize winner. I don't know, maybe back in the 60s, let's say, right? And had 8 people working for him, and they were called the Shockley 8. Now, they invented the semiconductor and sold it to Fairchild for $2 million each. So each walked with $2 million. Now, Shockley became, even he got a bigger portion of the pie, and he spent most of his life helping senators write laws that were never passed, by the way, write laws to basically sterilize people if they were poor, sterilize them if they were dumb. Because his theory was, and you can read all about him, it's a lot written about him. His theory was that the average IQ in the United States was going down every year. And I'll say it, according to him, because the dumb people are having more kids than the smart people. And he said eventually the IQ would get down so low, we wouldn't have a country. So he said it's all based on IQ. So he spent his whole life doing that. He was, a person that works on genetics. He funded a number of genetics research labs to show what that he believed was true.
Really?
And of course, some states had laws like that. Virginia had it, Maryland had it. It's a very famous show, Judgment at Nuremberg, where one of the defenses that the German attorney used, he showed laws in Virginia that were written, 60, 70 years ago that would allow the courts to basically sterilize dumb people and poor people.
Just for our listeners and viewers who are dog fans. You can see this is my dog Hercules. He hears your voice, Bob, and he always comes in, and he wants to be a part of the program.
And the nice thing about the Judgment at Nuremberg movie was a question came up: how do you determine if somebody is dumb? What is the test? And the Germans had a test, and the test was they gave you 3 words, and your goal was to make a sentence from the 3 words. And if you couldn't do that, then you were dumb, and the judge could then sentence you to be sterilized.
Wow.
Now, that's
I
right.
did not think that was the Shockley 8 story. I thought it was.
Well, that was what I was kind of showing, that Shockley, what Shockley was doing, it's related away to things that came up during World War II. All right. About sterilizing people. And that Germans did it. And one of the German defenses was that America was doing it too. This is pre-Shockley. Now jump forward to Shockley, and you've got that whole story. And Gene Kleiner, who was a member of the Shockley 8, was on my board for 7 years. He was at my house. I knew him very well. He was a soft-spoken guy. He was a physicist by training, and admitted that he was horrible at investing. But he was a partner in one of the largest venture capital firms in California.
Yeah, because you had a lot of investments with those guys. I mean, they invested in you. Perkins Kleiner, blah, 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 whatever the name.
And he said, but I don't, he said, every investment that I go for, we lose on. My partner, whose name is Tom Perkins, all he does is decide to invest in something in about 30 minutes, and the next thing we know, it's a rocket. Anyway.
Now, you know that one of the things I'm an advocate, mental health actually issued a press release calling on the Make America Healthy Again program to talk about mental health, which they haven't yet. They're doing a lot of great things up front, a lot of great things, what they're trying to do with food and nutrition, but mental health is not being discussed. But you know what Trump's solution, I researched this, Trump's solution for mental health is, and it kind of ties in, unfortunately, what you just said. Trump's solution is to reopen the insane asylums and put mentally ill or people with problems in the insane asylum. And if they don't get better, leave them there. But if they get better, then maybe release them.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. My uncle worked in an insane asylum, which later became, so they had another name for it. And my sister was one of the ones where the psychologist recommended that she have the electric shock treatment, which was popular. People don't realize that. Shocking your brain was a popular thing that was done for people. And I think to myself, run a big electric current through your brain and now you'll be better. No, you'll be so bloody stupid that you won't cause anybody any trouble. That was an approved medical procedure. Now, I understand it's still recommended by some psychologists. Hey, let's just go send electric shock to the person's brain. They did it to my sister and she was never the same.
Bad in a bad way?
Of course.
Oh.
Go put your fingers in a
well, that's just it.
How you feel.
That's just it I mean, we've just kind of, and it started in the 80s, and I'm a huge Reagan fan, but Reagan actually was part of the whole era of moving away from funding mental health. And I know that, I think I've told you this story before, but Senator Gus Bogina, now in heaven, was the chairman of the Ways and Means of Kansas. Mm-hmm. And it was a Democratic thing to fund the clinics or the hospitals, Larned or Osawatomie, and other mental health programs, Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah. And the big one was in St. Joe, Missouri.
Yeah. Well, for Kansas, though, Gus was a big proponent, and he would always get these awards from these liberal Democratic organizations, even though he was a Republican senator, because he would fight for them. But Gus always said, if we don't fund and keep the level of support in the mental health community today, in the year 2000 and 2010 and beyond, we will have mental health issues across Kansas and the country. And he was right.
Yeah, the mental health is, by the way, jumping back to the beginning of the series I mentioned was called Adolescent.
Yes.
There is
And
a
it's okay to
mental
jump back because I know how to do that because I live on ADD Avenue.
There was a mental health aspect of that because this was a young boy. He was 13 or 14 years old, and clearly he had a mental issue. But my other point that I'm trying to make is that I don't know if we totally understand. I don't understand the impact that social media has on our younger people because they bully each other, talk about each other. You know, they're chatting and they have all these code words.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and people, I mean, young people. Well, I know this from growing up. I was kind of an outcast. When I'm driving at is that I had people in my high school that really saved my life, but for the most part, I was always in the wrong group.
you were.
You know, even when I was growing up in grade school, I was the kid that got depantsed. I would go to the Boy Scout meeting, and all the big guys, the tough guys, would depants me and push me down a hill. So I'd get grass stains on my butt and my pants, and my mom would ask me how'd I get them.
I
So
would never imagine that.
I was that person because I didn't really fight back. I was not a fighter. And so when I got into high school, I probably would have flunked out of high school, but I became good friends with a different group. And we started playing chess every day. I could, John Lastlick, Tom Pineski, Tom Shores, Jim Lyons. Those four people saved my life. I would have probably flunked out of high school. I could have been in a lot of trouble. I didn't get
John
it.
Lastlick, he was an attorney, real estate attorney, wasn't he?
That's Bob Lastlick. That's his brother.
Oh, okay.
Lastlick's had three people: Bob, Joe, and John. Joe, I think, he might still be alive. He was the Washington D.C. correspondent for Kansas City Star.
Oh, interesting.
Joe was the oldest, and he had a really important job in Washington D.C. Then Bob Lastlick was an attorney. John Lastlick was an electrical engineer and eventually got into real estate and died of lung cancer because my only memory of John is him smoking a cigarette. That's my whole memory. That's what he did all the time I knew him. But anyway, the point I'm really trying to make is that there's people in my life that saved my life. There are times when I knew I was back on the right track. In my freshman and sophomore years of high school, I was, oh my God, I could care less, you know?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and I write in the Winsome Way, shameless plug for my book, but in the Winsome Way, I write about some people. I write about you in my book, but Tom Henning, when I was a freshman at Nebraska, he was a senior in my fraternity, Tau Kappa Epsilon, yes, Teak. He was my pledge father, and I could have really gone stupid, dumb, stinking, thinking, drinking. He really kept me focused on better things. And
by the way, how many minutes do we have? I want to stay right at 40 minutes since that's
we've got then about 10 minutes.
Good, because that's the length of time that the Housewives of Beverly Hills.
And we're trying to model ourselves after their success.
Yeah. I've been doing some more research on it. I find it more interesting every time I research it. I was watching another one of the episodes the other night. And what's fascinating about it in a way is that these people who are not actors are showing you their life.
Yeah.
Now, they may be dramatizing it a bit. I don't know that, but they got real cameras on them and they're making real statements, and they show how people in a group pick on each other. And
yeah.
I'll make one more point.
And they plot against each other.
I'll make one more point. I use the word group. Now, one time I asked Gene Kleiner, Gene, how many people should I put on the board? He said, you need at least 5. And I said, well, wait a minute. Well, I think we only should have 3. And he says, no. If you have 3, 2 people will always gang up on the one. See, that was like now jump forward to the Housewives. You see this in the Housewives. You see a couple of the women, one will support the other woman, and they'll gang up on another person against one. Now there's about, I don't know, 8. It looks like there's 8 people in the Housewives, right? But so it's enough that there are what I'll call subgroups right?
Yeah.
And we know this. We know that from high school, from college, from business, that everything gets into cliques. You join a country club, you got to get into the right clique, right? Just going to Beverly Hills wouldn't get you on the TV show. You have to get into the right clique, right? So groups of people make cliques. And in families, you can have cliques where it seems like some people agree on something. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at the Housewives, what I'm looking at is a foundation of people working together where they form cliques.
And you're trying to analyze them.
Yeah.
Maybe you should send them the your app.
But you can see it. What I mean is you can see person A backing person B as they go after person C. And then sometimes person A backs D to go after B. So in other words, cliques are dynamic, they're amorphous, they change, they're not fixed.
It's interesting. I just think that you are becoming an avid watcher of the Housewives of Beverly Hills. I think if that got out, even though we are now going worldwide on the internet with this information, but if that got out to the world that Bob Sherwood was watching this, I think it would be shocking. It would be shocking news to anybody that knows you.
It's shocking to me. but
it just shows how young and able to pivot and flex in life you are. That's because you're young.
Maybe, or it might show that I'm just plain gullible and give me an idea and I'll look at it regardless of how good the idea is. So what else we got? I
don't know if we have enough time, but the whole word, the term that's come out in the last few months, rare earth minerals. Minerals have always been around, or things we take out of the ground, coal, gold, copper. Now all of a sudden, rare earth minerals. We're going to try to get them from Ukraine.
Right. Well, why is that? Because in the EV world, you have important things. I'll end with one point. On the day Biden left office, check this out, group, look at it. He made a $990 million loan to a company called IONR, who are mining lithium in Wyoming, but they're an Australian company. $990 million. I actually bought
almost $1 billion.
I bought 100 shares of their stock just so I could follow them, right? But going back to your point, so and I've been waiting for somebody, Doge or somebody, to somebody come up and say, "Hey, that 900 million, it was 990 million, right? That went to this company." So you can look it up. It's IONR, and they're mining lithium at their Australian-based company. So, but nobody knows. Speaking of that, nobody knows where that money is gone. That's all I got. Look it up.
That's good stuff.
Look it up,
folks. When you can go from Housewives of Beverly Hills to lithium in Wyoming to Adolescence and Urban, right here, Banter with Bob and Dan. Write us at webtalkwithbob@gmail. Come back, because we're back on a roll almost every day. We're bringing you stuff you're going to go, I love these guys. These guys are crazy, but the couple guys from the heartland having fun, talking about stuff. We're just like the Seinfeld show, which it's a show about stuff. It's a show about nothing. But yet we always have stuff that just is interesting. Write us webtalkwithbob@gmail, and we'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
That's it. Goodbye. Goodbye, guys and gals.